We now move on to the third plenary session of the 16th Griha Summit, titled Together for Tomorrow, Uniting for Climate Action. Mata Bhumi Putroham Prithivyah, the earth is my mother and I am her son, serves as a strong reminder of our common responsibility to protect our mother earth. Achieving sustainability is not the responsibility of a single entity, but a collaborative effort across various sectors, including governments, corporates, institutions, and communities. The session intends to understand the defined role, responsibilities, and interests of stakeholders in accelerating climate action. It will address the next steps required to strengthen multi-stakeholder collaborations for scaling up sustainable initiatives. On that note, I would now like to invite our chair for this session on the stage, Mr. Ambassador Manjeev Singh Puri, Distinguished Fellow, Earth Science and Climate Change, the Energy and Resources Institute, TERI. Manjeev Singh Puri, a seasoned Indian diplomat from the 1982 IFS batch, has served as India's ambassador to the EU, Belgium, Luxembourg, Nepal, and deputy permanent representative to the UN. With expertise in climate change and sustainable development, he has led a negotiator for India at global forums, including the Rio 20 conference and UNFCCC COP15 in Copenhagen. He also played key roles in India's G8 to G5 summits and the Major Economies Forum. An alumnus of St. Stephen's College, Delhi, with a BA in economics and master's in management, he is a distinguished fellow at TERI. We welcome you, sir. Let me now request the speakers of the session to join the chair on the dais. Let's welcome Mr. Anshul Tiwari, founder and CEO, Youth Ki Awaaz. Mr. Anshul is a social entrepreneur and the founder of Youth Ki Awaaz, India's largest youth-driven platform, empowering over 200,000 young people to share stories and lead impactful conversation. With 10 million monthly readers and content in 13 languages, YKA drives campaigns on key issues like climate change, mental health, and disability rights. An Ashoka Fellow and a Forbes 30 Under 30 media influencer, Anshul is also a trustee of the Internet Freedom Foundation and the Misinformation Combat Alliance. He previously served on the UN Women's Civil Society Advisory Board for South and Southeast Asia. We welcome you, sir. I would like you to please join on the dais with us. Okay. Next, we have Ms. Sukhgeet Kaur, DDG and Advisor, Department of Defense Production, Ministry of Defense. Ms. Kaur is a Group A Central Civil Service officer with 25 years of experience serving in the Government of India. Previously at Niti Aayog, she worked on projects appraisals, industrial policy, and agricultural marketing. At the Ministry of External Affairs, she handles South and Southeast Asia relations and trade promotions. She holds a PhD in energy economics from University of Cambridge, where her thesis earned the James Clayton Award for Outstanding PhD in Economics. We welcome you, ma'am. Then we have with us Mr. Vaibhav Gupta, Associate Director, KPMG India. He is the Associate Director with ESG Climate Change Practice at KPMG. He is an environmental engineer and climate policy specialist. He brings a diverse professional experience of 13 plus years working with the government, think tank, industry, and consulting domain. His work engagements cuts cross industries, value chain, climate governance, greenhouse gases reporting, and many more. He is a contributing author in India's second biennial update report submitted to the UNFCCC. He has been part of the several working groups and task force constituted by the Government of India on areas related to critical minerals, energy data management, and circular economy. We welcome you, sir. And next we have Mr. Prabhakant Jain, Head CSR DS Group. He leads the corporate social responsibility function at DS Group, an FMCG leader in India. His expertise spans strategic planning, program design, policy formulation, and partnership management, focusing on water and livelihoods. He has worked on projects like water economic zones for farmers' livelihoods, Creativity Adda for youth development, and Project Samya to sensitize young boys. His initiatives have been recognized by institutions such as the Ministry of Jal Shakti, FICCI, and CII. Passionate about building partnerships to tackle societal issues, he continues to drive impactful community development projects. We welcome you, sir. I believe Mr. Anshul Tiwari has joined with us. I request you to please join us on the dais. And last but not the least, I would now like to welcome Mr. Shailesh Ranjan Gupta, Business Head, Asahi India Glass Limited. He is an experienced strategist with 18 years in the glass industry, specializing in business intelligence, product management, and marketing. He's a passionate advocate for sustainability and green building with expertise in energy efficiency, net zero concepts, and the smart use of glass in architecture. A certified green building trainer, he has trained over 3,000 individuals from diverse fields. We welcome you, sir. May I request all the panelists to now come forward for a photograph?
I like this, the family photograph before the event.
With this, I now take the opportunity to request and hand over the session to Ambassador Manjeev Singh Puri to take it ahead. Over to you, sir.
Veena, thank you very much. This was really very nice of everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, I see that in this hall, there are all wonderful, sprightly young people, but there are 3 other people like me sporting a bit of grey. So may I please ask you, first of all, to put your hands together for my dear friend who has put this all together. Mr. Seth, please stand up. The head of the GREA. You know, let me take a minute of your time. Let me take a minute of your time. Some of you are young. Some of you are perhaps associating yourself for the first time. Of course, GREA is India's preeminent accreditation forum in terms of green buildings. And the very fact that they announced this huge KV Sangathan coming together is no accident. It is as a result of who they are. And KV, I am sure, has calculated and found itself beneficial as a result. This is an institution which has done pioneering work. And Mr. Seth has been among those who has led it and currently is the head of it. So I want to welcome you all very much to this. Now a little bit of fun. You know, I'm going to wake you guys up here. It's 10:30 in the morning. Many of you, I don't know if you've had some chai, feeling good or not. But you know, usually the first session after lunch and the first session in the morning needs a bit of waking up. After that, the sessions run very well. So let me tell you, why do you think most of us are not wearing ties? Have any of you given it a thought? Yeah, I know the Financial Times has written the obituary of the tie. Why do you think here at this event we are not wearing ties? I know Mr. Seth is wearing a tie. I need to remove it. You should. No. Can you guess what? So let me tell you, have you heard of Conference of Parties of the UNFCCC? बाकू तो नाम सुना है? सुना है नहीं सुना? कोई है जिसने नहीं सुना बाकू? कोई है? बाकू में क्या हुआ? बताएं मुझे. चलिए कुछ नहीं हुआ. वो भी मैं मानने के थे. So ऐसा है, something about 15 odd years back, there was a Japanese minister who is now, I think, the mayor of Tokyo. A leading Japanese politician was a lady. Japan, if any of you know, is perhaps the most antithetic of this empowered societies. Men rule. There's no issue about that. But this lady rose to the top and she became the environment minister. She landed up at one of these big COPs. I think it was most probably Bali. And she looked at all of us sitting out there wearing ties and some of them extremely well clad, even though Bali, the temperature was 45 degrees. And she looked at us and said, hey guys, you all are interested in doing something about climate change and you want the air conditioning to be maintained at 16 degrees. No good. Take off your ties raise the temperature of the air conditioning. That's when started off this whole idea that individuals matter. And what are we doing today? Why are we all here? And what is it that I'm going to ask her? Other than Sukhjit, who represents the defense sector, the biggest in the world. For all of us, the idea is what do you do individually, personally, as your company and as your corporate? You act yourself and something will happen. And let me leave with you one last thought and then I'll sit down. The Honorable Prime Minister at Glasgow announced this thing called LIFE, Lifestyles for Environment, India's movement for this particular thing. What does it mean? What does it mean to any of you? Let me put it across quite simply. It basically means, what are you doing about it? It's one thing to talk about countries. It's another thing to talk about large corporates. What does ExxonMobil have to do? We'll find out. What does the defense sector have to do? We'll ask the question. But the question is, what can you do? And frankly, unless you do things yourself, and you bring about a momentum and a lifestyle change, unless you bring about something to do as a movement, you are not going to pressurize the corporate good in all of this happening. So I was recently in Baku. As you can all imagine, the big elephant in the room of Baku was President Donald Trump, who wasn't present. And why do you think he was the elephant in the room? Come on, somebody should know about this here. You all come for a climate-related event. The reason being, in 2016, he pulled out the Americans from the UN, from the Paris Agreement. Do people think it will happen again? I don't know about that. We'll have to wait and watch, because he's a mercurial individual who takes decisions at the drop of a hat. But this elephant was certainly there in the room. And then someone I met, who's a World Bank employee, but based in Florida, came up to me and said, Mr. Ambassador, do you realize what has happened? And I asked her, how did you vote? And she said, look, you know how I would have voted. But I just want to tell you, a large number of people in Florida did not vote in the direction that you would have liked them to vote, sitting here at this COP in Baku. And I asked her why. And he said, do you recognize that the way climate change has been pitched over the last 20 years, it has been pitched as a major macroeconomic issue? Money, energy, ExxonMobil on one side, BP on the other, big money, development, these sort of macroeconomic issues. How does it impact the ordinary guy sitting in Florida? He looks at climate change and says, hey guys, you want me to change my car? You want me to change my fuel? You know, it's already gone up from $1 a gallon to $4 a gallon. I'm not willing to pay anything more. And she said, why did you not think of making this entire thing centric to the individuals? How has it impacted your health? How has it impacted your lives? What will happen if the water level rise? What will happen if, let me say, virus goes a little unchecked control? We've all seen through COVID. What will happen? Will you not be willing to pay? Because otherwise what we are really doing is, we're taking on privately what is actually a societal and a governmental expense. That's exactly what we are doing. So what are we here for? We're going to try and talk in terms of what can people do? Vaibhav, there couldn't be a better guy than you. And you know the reason why. It's not just because you've been at the UN and you've done all sorts of other things of that kind. Oh, sorry, Anshul, to you. It isn't because you've been at the UN and you've done all sorts of good things. But because the future belongs to you. And you should be able to speak on this subject, combining your mind along with your heart. So I want you to take a few minutes. Sit there, speak here, whatever it is. But energize the guys in terms of what the youth must do and lead, which results in political change, which results in societal thinking. And it's not just a question of climate skeptics and no. Let's forget all that. Let's see what we can do. Our specific ideas here are to do with what we call build, but basically urbanization. And believe me, friends, urbanization is not going away. We have seen the huge expanse of urbanization in India. Today, some people say that from what I used to grow up with, that 70% of Indians lived in rural India. I think the figure is almost the other way around now. So, Anshul, this panel is yours. You have about 5-7 minutes. And we will ask questions. We want you guys to ask questions. So we will leave a little bit of time. We have only 90 minutes. So Your turn, Anshu.
No, no pressure at all. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Anshul. I run an organization called Youth Ki Awaaz. Youth Ki Awaaz is one of India's largest civic engagement platforms. We engage with young people from across the country, more than 200,000 young people every month, on telling stories on issues that they deeply care about. Climate change is one such area that young people talk about on our platform. And we have more than 60,000 stories on climate change, local to national to various languages and so on and so forth. And climate change is actually the reason why I started Youth Ki Awaaz, because when I started it, I was 17, I was in school, I was finishing my school, and I realized that everybody says that young people are important, but nobody cares to listen to young people, and nobody wants to make them a part of decision-making processes. So that's a very big, significantly large issue when we talk about things like climate change, because we always say that the future belongs to young people, but the decision-making should not be done with their voices included. And that was a big moment for me to feel that, this is not okay. And I wanted to say something, so I started Youth Ki Awaaz, where I started writing my own thoughts. And then over the next many years, many more people joined in, lakhs of people joined in, and started sharing what they wanted to say. Now, we started at a time when the internet was not the way it is right now. It was not as advanced as it is right now. It was very nascent. Blogging was the in thing. Social media was just coming about. Twitter had not been conceptualized. Instagram had not been conceptualized. Only Facebook was 1.5 years into India. So social media was very nascent. So at that time, having a space meant a lot for young people. Today, that's not the case. People have space. People are able to talk about what they truly want to talk about. There are people who are talking about climate change every single day, but the question is, are we actually listening to them? And that's become a next level challenge for a lot of young people today. So a few years ago, we decided that we have to change this. When young people speak, they are thought of as outliers. We don't want to listen to them. They're protesting and so on and so forth. And with the government, we realized that there is a lot of onus on them to take decisions for everybody. And it's not very easy in a country like India, because there are so many diverse perspectives, diverse lived experiences. So how do we really create a common platform for all of it to come together? We looked at what policy frameworks existed for young people to actually engage with positively. And we came up with the perspective that India had committed to net zero emissions as a part of the Paris Agreement. But the documentation around it, the planning around it had not begun at that time, about 5-6 years ago, or it was just nascent in a very early stage. And we felt that that's a brilliant opportunity for us to start engaging both with the government and with young people to try and see how India's net zero perspective can be very inclusive of young people's voices. So we started a project called Zero Se Hero. And Zero Se Hero basically was a simple idea that if India commits to net zero, it'll become a climate hero. And not just India as a country, but Indian businesses, Indian startups, state governments, individuals, anybody who commits to net zero can become a climate hero. And this campaign for us became a monumental campaign. It was the first ever public campaign where more than 12,000 young people shared stories of how they're willing to commit to net zero, what climate change means for them individually. It urged businesses, companies, big companies like Zomato, even bigger companies like Mahindra, coming together on a common platform to say that we are all willing to commit to net zero. And our policy dockets, which were all voices of young people, got noticed by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, and we instituted a youth fellow at the ministry who worked over the next 2.5 years to create the first ever framework in India, which is for city governments to include young people's voices when they do their climate action planning or the net zero planning, called the Youth Act Framework, which is available with the National Institute of Urban Affairs, and it's available on their website. And we noticed one very powerful thing, which is that if we create enough spaces where all stakeholders are able to come together on a common ground, then people want to listen, people want to act, and people want to make policy move forward. So no matter what we say, I think the crux of this is, be it the life mission or be it whatever it might be, the most important thing is that we have to think of climate action, we have to think of sustainability, energy transition, no matter what we're focusing on when it comes to the environment, in a manner which is collaborative, which includes young people's voices, which includes voices of every person who's living with the impact of climate change, and takes into account the challenges that policymakers face when they're making policies for extremely diverse populations like the ones we have in India. But I'll pause at this point. and hand over back to you.
Anshul, thank you very much. This is really interesting. And what I found very interesting in what you said was that as a young person, normally one would have expected a great deal of, I do it and lead by example. But you went into a space which is normally reserved for different people, which is develop policies. And policies at the end, you know, you all may say, how does it matter? Somebody has written a policy. It's a farak kya padega? But the fact is, it sets up an institution, a framework by which hundreds, if not thousands, can then participate. And that's the advantage of doing policy work. Vaibhav, we can't have better experts on policy, isn't it, than the good desktops, the KPMGs of the world. And somebody said that you would participate in developing our own action plans on this. So I'm very delighted to hear. I'd like you to take off from where Anshul left off. What have you done in terms of the work that you incubate? After all, ministries take your drafts and, frankly speaking, do a little bit of politics on it and say, what a good job done. And they're very happy that it's done by KPMG. There's a great deal of credibility to it. Do you internalize what Anshul has said? Do you take this forward? Let's hear from you.
Sure. Thank you so much. So I'll just pick from where Anshu left and what you also mentioned. You know, we have to, you know, link it with the individual. And when we talk about policies, so we all may have, you know, fancy plans in place. We all, you know, come together to discuss various ideas. But in the end, I feel until and unless we are not translating those policies into action plan, it's all a waste. So we may have, you know, deliberated over, you know, immensely, you know, useful ideas. But in the end, it's a collaborative ecosystem where government works, where businesses work, where individuals work. And then there could be barriers and challenges at various levels, where one person might not be able to link or, you know, attach with those barriers, those challenges. And that's where I think there is a huge importance of action plans. So to start with India's own journey, I feel that we are now, you know, pretty much used to submission of these biennial update reports, national communications to UNFCCC on a periodic basis. We do have our biennial update report as well, which is eventually going to transition into biennial transparency report. So the focus is on data and disclosure, but in the end, I think these policies, these documents has to be translated or downscaled at a lower level. We did a fantastic job by translating NDC by empowering state to have their own state action plans. So that again, we can have a voice of each and every individual states. And they can decide that what are their priorities, how do they want to drive, you know, climate actions. Likewise, if we talk about businesses, if we talk about corporates, we need to, you know, similarly frame, you know, sectoral action plans. That will give a directional approach to various businesses, various corporates, that how they can align themselves with India's, say, net zero 2070 roadmap. We have, I think, a very well thought trajectory of 2070, keeping in mind development goals as well, you know, aligned as are, you know, one of the objective. So this also give a direction to businesses, corporates, that they can also align themselves to net zero. It's not something which comes as a burden. They can internalize, you know, this approach, this philosophy in their business. They can internalize into their action plan. And the first step is, again, data disclosure. We are seeing, you know, more and more regulations coming into place with, you know, SEBI saying, you know, BRSR disclosure with a top 1,000, you know, listed companies. And then it is voluntary for the rest of the others. So these disclosures helps, but over and above, I think once we have that understanding with each and individual corporate level, they also need to identify what are the emission hotspots. They have to act upon it. Low-hanging fruits are easy to fix, you know, for example, energy efficiency, energy switch, or process efficiency. Companies are, I think we are seeing day in, day out, they are looking for best available technologies. But then there are barriers like cost. Then there are barriers like regulations. So that alignment will come once we will be having those sectoral plans in place. We would be able to identify those barriers better. We will be able to sit together again, you know, when deciding policies, when deciding further, linkages of policies with various, you know, goals and objectives. So I'll take a pause here. Over to you, sir.
Vaibhav, thank you very much. It's very interesting. Did you all follow this? So, starting from listening, your voice, my voice, younger people's voices, you develop ideas which lead to policy frameworks. And you put it across and have the frameworks developed. And then look at what Vaibhav said. We have a macroeconomic idea, net zero by 2070. ये याद रखना 2070 इतनी दूर नहीं है. ये मत कहना कि यार मेरे समय में तो नहीं होगा, मेरे बेटों के समय में भी नहीं होगा, मेरे को क्या फर्क पड़ता है. Because the world doesn't work that way. Incrementally they ask you for glide paths, they ask you for how you are doing. हर 3-4 साल के बाद एक global stock take होता है and you get, named and shamed in this game. And so therefore, there is a directional move, and this directional move is very important. And what does Vaibhav tell us? I want you all to focus on this and think through this. That after you've organized, from the grassroots to the policy plan, to the macroeconomic plan, and now we are decentralizing. You're taking it to the states, the first level federal point as far as India is concerned. Here in this conference, we are focusing a lot on urbanization. Urbanization is quintessentially, in terms of the Indian constitution, something for the states in India. Most rules and regulations are theirs, they run them, they implement them, and they are the ones who are in charge of it. Of course, the central government has huge overriding abilities, especially in terms of money, in terms of standard setting, goals, and so on and so forth. And look what they've done. Vaibhav, I'm going to take you and continue this segue. So what are the other huge major areas where this particular ideas, the voices, whether it's national or international, where do they get taken in? And I'm going to turn to the defense sector. So Sukhjit, I'm going to turn to you, but all of you, let me have a little bit of fun with all of you. All of you have heard of this emissions reports, IPCC, every country reports its emissions, etc., etc. How many of you are kind of familiar with the system? I mean, how does a country like India of our size report its emissions to the IPCC? Surely there's no meter going around all over the country and then measuring and then totaling it up. कैसे होता होगा? आप में से किसी ने economics, statistics, econometrics, scientific measurements, ये सब चीजें पढ़ी हैं ना? थोड़ी बहुत तो किसी ने पढ़ी होंगी. So they all work through these kind of things, coefficients and so on and so forth. But do you know, there's at least one major player in the world which does not report the greenhouse gas emissions which emanates from its military. Can you guess which that country is? Come on, someone guess that. Pakistan. South Korea आजकल बेचारे न्यूज़ में है, but उनको छोड़ देते हैं. No. How can that be the case? All of you need to have some 001 lesson in international relations. It's the United States. Why? Because then do you know what their figures would be? Quite a lot at a higher level from already the world's highest. And that's the nature of it. But why is it that they don't report? Because they understand the way nation states work and the way international governance works. Most of us are relative newcomers to this game. And to understand what is international law, what is policy space, becomes a very important element. But this was only, by the way of an aside, to give you a little bit of flavor of what happens in these negotiations and so on. Sukhjit, with all your expertise, PhD, if I'm not mistaken, Keynesian economics, we spent from the year 1992 onwards pursuing Keynesian economics by saying, I want my policy space. I don't want my space cringed. My per capita income is only this much. I need to grow. I need to do something about it. And to some extent, we were successful. To some extent, beyond a point, once we also achieved a degree of grandfathering, we had to also fall in line. It's part and parcel of global governance. But what I want to hear from you is not this. I want to ask you, the Indian defense sector has been and is growing. majorly and in a big manner. So I'd like you to sketch for all our colleagues here a little bit, if you can, in terms of what you are doing in terms of your policies, taking off from what Weber mentioned in terms of states are expected to do. What are you looking at wanting to do in the large defense production sector? In terms of, let's put it simply, our climate goals, net zero in 2050. What are we looking at? We'll then ask you some more questions, but the panel is yours.
So thank you, Mr. Puri, for your question. I think for defense production, for any production activity, effective energy management is a very important aspect, because high energy costs can lead to a surge in the operational expenses. So therefore, we have these 16 defense PSUs in the country, and all of these 16 PSUs are actually prioritizing energy efficiency to cut down the cost and the environmental impact. So we follow a two-pronged approach. One, we try to promote the greater use of renewable energy in our campuses, our factory premises, and through setting up more solar and wind energy plants. On the other hand, we also are making efforts to efficiently use the energy that we have in our, on the demand side through various measures. So on the renewable energy front, we have a 50% RE target set up for all the PSUs. And I must say that all our defense PSUs have met this target at the aggregate level. And now the next goal is to go down to the unit level and to achieve the 50% RE target of the consumption requirements at the unit level. So our PSUs are now actively putting up more solar wind plants. They're also procuring green energy from the DISCOMs, from the open access sources. And we also have about 212 megawatt of solar wind installed capacity in our campuses. So the effort also is that these plants must run on the maximum efficiency. So any kind of defect, any damage is promptly repaired. That's on the RE front. On the demand side front, we are making a big shift towards energy-saving technologies, across various sectors, including ventilation, lighting, motor drive systems. For instance, we're going to now go in for 100% LED lights in all our factory premises, all offices, all our residential colonies. Our fans, we are using BLDC motors. ACs are being replaced by 3-star, 5-star rated ACs. Conventional drives are being upgraded to VFD drives. APFC panels are being installed to maintain the power factor equal to near about 0.99, and also kind of cut down the energy losses. So wind-driven, turbo ventilators are now replacing this conventional exhaust fans in the factory shop floors. We also have a number of, occupancy-based sensors which regulate the operation of the ACs, lights, fans in our office buildings, in our workshops. So a lot of, measures have been taken by PSUs to meet the 10% reduction target. We have a 10% reduction target for specific energy consumption. So how we do it? Our PSUs are replacing the energy efficient equipments. They're optimizing the load pattern to reduce the peak load. They're also arresting the leakages in the compressed air, the water systems, optimizing energy consumption, also going in for major green technologies in use. So that is the reason that a major shift has been made towards energy efficiency, and that is also being reflected in recent data that shows the success of these energy transitions. You would agree that, for any system, good quality, timely data is very, very important to monitor, review the progress, and also implement the energy efficiency policies. So I must, share that this year, DDP, Defense Production Department, has launched an online, centralized, networked portal, which is called Swarna. And that is actually helping our PSUs drive energy efficiency, take data-driven decisions, and develop partnerships to execute projects and also to share the best practices. Now, this is a portal that stores the historical data and analyzes the trends in consumption across the year-on-year basis. It also enables PSUs to calculate the savings that they do in a year and also speed up the progress of implementation of energy efficiency action plans. On various fronts, we have taken a lot of measures. For example, on the sustainable mobility vision, our PSUs are now going towards electric hybrid solutions to meet up, to align with India's broader goal of reducing vehicular pollution. And the entire internal movement of material is being done by non-conventional vehicles. All our passenger vehicles are being now, converted progressively to electric vehicles. We also have a system, whenever there's an end-of-life vehicle, it has to be, replaced by electric vehicle only. So we are also setting up EV charging stations. In fact, we're now setting up green solar EV charging stations in our campuses. On the green building side, we already have 6 GREHA-compliant campuses in our PSUs. And we now have made a mandate for every new project that's coming up, it must meet the green certification rating. That's a big thing we are now doing. So, we have, in fact, in our entire policy, as a part of this movement, what we have done is that we've also had a number of enhanced focus on sustainable waste management, water conservation, rainwater harvesting, reclaiming the wastewater, recharging the groundwater, in terms of, plantations, adding more trees, more green cover, and also, having a policy of reducing, reusing, recycling waste. That's a very major thing that we have done. So ultimately, I think what happens, any kind of movement to succeed, it must involve the people, the ground workers. So we also are counseling our workers, our operators, to, adopt small habits which go a long way in conserving energy. So, I think to sum it all, on one side, we are promoting the greater use of RE across our campuses. And the other side, we're also trying to optimize the energy consumption, reduce the cost, so that, we have also seen that in the last 1 year, all our PSUs have reduced the energy use intensity from 3% to 50% in the manufacturing process. This is a big achievement for any production activity. So by, by fostering a culture of sustainability, by also tracking the, the emission reduction, and by also focusing on green technologies, we have now, our PSUs have now lessened the environmental impact and also are trying to maintain the long-term operational efficiency and reputation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really, really very nice. And, thank you for your presentation. What I really liked was setting a template. You're doing something on the production side, and you are doing equally much on the consumption side. So if you're trying to do REs, you're trying to do battery charging stations, you're also trying to tell people, both at the corporate level and at the individual level, in terms of being more efficient with their consumption. That's absolutely fantastic. And when it comes from an institution like the Indian defense production sector, I hope it leads as a template for the Indian corporate sector. Because, you are government. Obviously, government's commitment sits very importantly with you, and you implement it. A degree of cost is absorbed, which becomes a little different in the private sector. But when you lead by template and people see its advantages, then you are doing another national service, indeed a global service, that you are showing it can be done, and it's not an impossible task to do. You simply have to align yourself and your goals. No, thank you very much. This was really instructive. And I want you all to remember, most of us, people like me, grew up with the idea that the Indian defense industry was large, but much of it came through collaborations, etc. Have you seen the stepped up actions that we are taking? Whether it's in aircrafts, whether it's in shipbuildings, tanks, vehicles, etc. And in cutting edge technologies, which our defense PSUs, etc. are doing. So it's such a massive sector, and its impact will be across the economy, really fabulous. Let me turn to the private sector. Frankly, much as we like the idea of government-owned, public-owned, PSUs, etc., doing their bit, they will do their bit. They, in fact, lead in terms of social change. We know that. We've seen it. But at the end of the day, if you, me, and the corporates, where we buy shares, they don't act, nothing is going to happen. So, Prashant, you are, Prabhakant, you're sitting a little far away from me, so please don't mind it. But that wasn't the intention, that you won't be among those called earlier, so your chance will also come. I want to ask you, you of course do CSR for your group, but put yourself away from CSR. in various ways, the way we look at CSR is that earlier it was a case of your conscience, a degree of philanthropy, etc. And then we guys from government stepped in and made it law. And so this wonderful expression CSR came in, and now is going on to ESG, etc. Look, when you shrink policy space, many things happen. In the international negotiations for countries, negotiators try to buy policy space. But domestically, in fact, in your own home, अगर आपने कुछ करना है, you have to tell somebody ये ही करेंगे और नहीं करेंगे. अगर आपको हमने गाड़ी खरीदनी है, कौन सी गाड़ी, तो आपके घर में अगर 4 लोग हैं तो 6 ओपिनियंस आ जाएंगे. Somebody has to say ना, अरे यार मैं तो काले रंग की गाड़ी खरीदूंगा और उसमें ईवी लगेगा होगा. That's how you will decide कि यार हमने ये लेनी है, टाटा टिगॉन लेनी है, क्या लेनी है. Policy space has to be cringed at the end. And governments have a right to do it because they are democratically elected, at least as far as we are concerned. That's of course happening. But I want to know what you're doing from within. And how do you see green action by your group contributing to the group's well-being and its shareholders' well-being today and for the future? Prabhakant, this is what will drive things.
So for me, actually, it's very difficult to keep myself away from CSR because it's not the about 2024-14. Actually, from last 2 decades, actually, I'm completely working in this development sector only, and particularly working with the grassroots level work. So from the business side, actually, there are a lot of works already is going on, and we are actually operating from the LEED certified building, one of the best sustainable building in the world. And there are business fronts, we have different target sets, and we are working on those lines. Basically, I'm heading the CSR function, and this topic actually is talking about the Together for Tomorrow. And so I'd just like to share my one of the experience. Day before yesterday, actually, I'm coming from one of the place in Karoli district in Rajasthan, which is hardly 300 kilometers from here. And I had a discussion with the community. That community does not have electricity. That community does not have mobile connectivity. They don't have road access. They don't have schools and medical infrastructure. And they are most vulnerable for climate change. The change which is happening actually at the larger level, they are actually vulnerable. Rain pattern is changing. They are vulnerable for their agriculture thing. They desperately need water for cattle and their farmland, but they don't have. They are depending on the kharif crop, which is heavily dependent on the monsoon rain, but that rain pattern is changing. So they are struggling, their crops are dying. So in that case, actually, we feel that we have a collective responsibility. It's not about the corporate or any others. As a society, actually, we have to grow together. So at DS Group, when we talking about the CSR, what should we do? Then we thought actually we are primarily an FMCG company, or more specifically it's a food and beverages related sector. So farmers are very important stakeholders. Whether they are supplying product to us or not, that doesn't matter. As a community, they are very, very important. And then when we looking for the farmers, around 86% are marginal and small farmers in the country. And they are not supplying their produce to the industry. And we decided to work with them. And then we are working on the 5 core areas. And out of 5, 4 are directly related to the climate. The first one, actually, we are working on the conservation of water harvesting structures. So I would not record the numbers and everything, but there are a huge number of structures that we have constructed. If it is possible, I would love to share some photographs also here. So that is the one part. So we are constructing water harvesting structures for them. Then we are actually leading towards the fetching water, basically water from source to the farm. So we are encouraging the green solution for that. Traditionally, there's electric pumps are there, but in most of the cases, electricity is not available. So people are using the diesel pump to fetch water from water source to their farm. So we are converting them into the solar thing. And third one, actually, we are encouraging to using the micro irrigation practices so that water can be judicially utilized to the larger area. And the fourth one is very important. When water is available, then there is a high chances for the basically, I would not say the malpractice, but there are lot of chances to moving toward the chemical farming. So we are actually preventing farmers to not move toward the chemical farming, move toward the sustainable farming, go for the diversification in their farmland so that they can minimize the impact of the climate. And the last one, which is basically market access, because market is very important, but that is not directly related to the climate, but other forces are very important with the market. So this is the work that we are doing with the various parts of the country, most extensively in Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, but we have projects in other parts of the country also.
Prabhakantji, thank you. You know, you touched upon perhaps the most important thing as far as we are concerned. And you touched upon this because it's also your core business, which is Pani. You would agree with me here, sitting in Delhi, that perhaps the matter that should be of greatest concern to all the young people here is not Bijli but Pani. Delhi, as the world's largest urban agglomeration, will be water stressed like nobody's business. With all these newfangled technologies on power, we actually today think that we are a power surplus country. The reason being, of course, we don't have purchasing power. That's a different matter. But water is the critical thing. So whatever you are doing in terms of water, and you said that you come from the CSR, you want to give back to the community. But what I like is that you have linked it to commercial interests. Because unless you have commercial interests, you will only do जो हम लोग सिख धर्म में कहते हैं 10% हमने रख दिया वहां पर, बाकी चलेगा. This way it's 90% which is involved. Prabhakant, moving away from the way we were doing one cycle with the other, I want to ask you a question. So when Kamal was preparing me for this thing, he looked at you and he said, आप इनसे कुछ NGOs के बारे में जरूर पूछिएगा, ये लोग उनके साथ कैसे काम करते हैं. मैंने सोचा उसके बारे में कि बोले ना बोले, पूछे ना पूछे. फिर मैंने कहा नहीं, अब सुखजीत जी ने जो इतना आपको बड़ा मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक लेवल पे बताया, I said I can't let the private sector not have its say. And I am glad you said it. But I want to ask you, isn't there a role for civil society, for people, think tanks ko choda chhod ke, NGOs, those who are on the ground, to do something about, let me take the case of water. Let's not go away from water. Water, it's your specialization, you know it, you have an interest in water. How do we involve them more? Because water will be critical for all this urbanization. आपने मुझे अभी एक गांव के बारे में बताया, एक एरिया का, it's actually a peri-urban area. It's only a question of our definitions. Each of those guys is carrying cell phones. Each of those fellows are wanting these ambitions. So this is the changes that is overcoming. You go there by car, doesn't it? You're not taking a camel to go there.
Yeah, we have to.
No, I know what you're saying. Point I'm trying to make to you is 300 kilometers actually almost makes it in the adjuncts of Delhi. That's the nature of this game. So tell me, what should we do in terms of involving NGOs, people's organizations, quite apart from Panchayati Raj and the state government, वगैरह उसको छोड़ के. What do we do? Because this will build what you call equities. लोगों का अपना interest होगा उसमें. I want to hear from you your experiences on this.
So basically, I feel that there are 2-3 important work that civil society and NGOs can do that. The first of all, for the equitable distribution of, so whether let's say resources or anything, the decentralization approach is required. And I feel that civil society can reach out to the most deserving people in the country. So they have actually very important role in that. And in terms of the operationally, I feel that there are 2 major roles that civil society can play. One is actually the creating the innovation to the solution or model, because they are operating in a limited geography, so they know what is the basically nuances of that particular community. So they can come up with the right kind of model, which model can be further scaled up by the government and the large organization. That is the one part that civil society can play. And second, actually, government have resources, government have actually the policies, but the implementation of that policy, that civil society has very critical role. For example, I'll give you the reverse example. For there's a ASHA worker in the NRHM thing which introduced in 2004. But that initiative was started in Jamkhed by the Community Health Research Project in Maharashtra in 70s. So that was the pilot initiative that is taken by the one of the organization, and that further actually included in the policy. Now it's an integral part of our health system. Similarly, there are a lot of things. For example, most of the solar panels actually were installed by the government funding in our projects also. So we are actually playing the catalyst role. We are investing the gap money that farmer is required, but a large chunk of money actually coming from the government scheme only. So that is our approach, and we are obviously taking the help of civil society. So actually reaching out to the government scheme and the solution to the community, that civil society can play important role.
Thank you very much, Prabhakant. I think करना तो हम सबको इकट्ठा होगा. If you can harness those who have local equity, you know, the Prime Minister often talks in terms of global and local and so on. Global तो बातें बड़ी-बड़ी हो गई, हमने net zero का commitment ले लिया. Our large defense PSUs are doing what they can. But अगर local नहीं करेगा, तो आप कैसे आगे इसको लेके जाएंगे? And local is important. And I'm very happy to see that a large conglomerate like you recognizes the role of local, because that's important. So Shailesh, let me turn to you. Not last because you're sitting next to me. Ashai Glass. Yeah, this Habitat Center must be the last building built in New Delhi which uses bricks. अब तो सिर्फ आशाई ग्लास ही लगता है सब जगह. सही है ना? और ये लोग कहते हैं आपको बिल्डिंग बनानी है, हम लोग 1 साल में बना देंगे. सेंट्रल विस्टा में न्यू सेंट्रल सेक्रेटेरिएट बन रहा है, सारा ही मेरा ख्याल आशाई ग्लास से बन रहा होगा यार. इन a matter of a few years, you're going to see the largest building. The glass industry itself has undergone huge change. You know, when I was younger than what you guys are here, a glass meant something very fragile. You were careful with it. Today you can jump on it. होने का कोई सवाल नहीं है, स्टील फिर से अंदर हो जाए, इनका ग्लास तो नहीं लेगा. But, Shailesh, that's not the story that I wanted to ask you. Look, glass and its manufacture and what goes into all of it is, from a climate perspective, something that needs to be tackled. You are, if I may say so, one of the near hard to abate sectors. So there's a lot to all of this. It's not such a simple matter. They have produced what they've done, but there have been costs to all of this. So I want to hear from you, Shailesh. What are you doing as a company? You're a global player. You're not just a local player like this. You're a massive global player. What are you doing, and what are the lessons that each and every one of us individually can take from that? And how can we make that, let me say, at least a community mission, if not a national mission? I want to hear from you because you bring a special expertise to all of this.
Thank you so much, sir. And it's a great honor to share this stage with the panelists, the eminent panelists, and the chair like you. And the kind of enthusiasm what you have brought, I'm sure that I'll try to keep the level intact. And it's also an honor to represent Asahi India Glass Limited. As you say that it's the largest integrated glass manufacturing company. And sir, what you have raised is a very eminent, very serious topic. That, okay, we are using glass, but the question always comes that, are we using the glass or are we abusing with it? So this is the question what I'll try to answer today. But before that, the place where I am right now, that I was actually the last, definitely not the least in all the panelists. Exactly the same thing what happens with the glass in a built environment. You have designed, you have thought about it, you start making it. The time when the building is at its near completion, at the end, you have already run off with your budgets, your timelines, and then glass comes into the picture. At that point of time, what we expect, that we need to build it faster so that we will not run off. So lowest cost, best quality of the product at the lowest timeline. Maybe it's a kind of paradox. So why this paradox is coming is because maybe we have not thought about this product at the beginning when we were actually thinking about it. And that's where we come into the picture. So I'll put my answer in 3 parts. So what we are doing at the manufacturing, because that is one most important part where the glass is energy juggler. Second is what we are doing with the all value chain, all the partner in the value chain. And third, most important, I think, is the awareness about uses of the glass. So when we talk about the manufacturing, so if we'll take it 15, 20 years before, we used to take furnace oil for burning that silica sand, melting it at 1600 degree. But today, most of the part of the energy requirement is coming either from the clean energy or the renewable energy. That is one very significant change what we have done. And that change, what it does, it reduces the carbon which is used in the manufacturing, because glass as a product has no carbon in it. So if someone is telling that, okay, I want to make a low carbon glass, there is no carbon, so how can you make a low carbon glass? But while making it, the carbon what you have used, how much you can reduce it. And that is what we are doing. Our latest plant, which is coming in Rajasthan, Bhilwara, it is using 95% of the clean and renewable energy. So this is going to be the first of its kind. So we are able to tackle that part of the product. Now coming to the second part, the product which actually is made and put into the building, because glass is used in the envelope. And most of the heat which is coming inside the building is through the envelope. So yes, there are multiple technology which is developed right now. And if I may say that, the technology is far ahead as compared to our adoption rate today in India. Like just one floor ahead, we are discussing about BIPV today. But are we ready to adopt it today in India? There are challenges of infrastructure that not more skilled people available to put that BIPV system into the building. Second is the kind of dust which we are seeing that reduces the output of the energy which this product can generate. So yes, these are the few challenges what we are trying to tackle it. But as the responsible company, we are working towards that. And second part is the awareness. Whatever we will do here, if what I said at the beginning, that at the end you have to use glass, and at the lowest cost you may be using some wrong glass. And then finally you will be blaming that, okay, the glass is the culprit here. So what we have started doing is there are few initiatives what we have taken which is not kind of profit-making initiative. It is purely about the awareness, increment of the awareness. First is what we call it AIS Design Olympiad, ADO, where we call all the architectural college students to participate in the design competition so that they start thinking about the glass at their college level itself. So that tomorrow if they become a practitioner, they know about this product, they know the nitty-gritty about it. Second is AIS Masterclass, where we collaborate with the eminent people, the key architects, consultants in the country. They go to that architectural colleges and share their knowledge, their experience, so that it encourages the student to think about this product again. And the last part is the AIS Academy. So AIS Academy is our initiative that we go and meet the college admin and try to put this as a curriculum in the college itself. So basically at the grassroots level, if people are aware about this product, definitely tomorrow when they will become the practicing architect or practicing consultant, they will be putting more effort in deciding that what kind of product to be used. And from the technology side, what kind of support which we are giving is that we have a dedicated technical team which has the energy simulation software to calculate the energy performance index for the building, and to help those people who doesn't know much detail about these nitty-gritties. So we help them in understanding about this overall selection process of the product.
Sailesh, thank you. So guys, let me ask him a simple question. शैलेश यहाँ से 3 किलोमीटर दूर शायद भारत की सबसे ज़्यादा most, let me say, prominent buildings coming up in the most prominent space of Delhi are taking place, and I'm not talking about Central Vista. I'm talking about the World Trade Center. If you look at it, it's all glass. For a country that receives 364 days of sunlight and the sun bears down on us, what would people say is the impact of using glass on climate change?
Very good question, sir. Not a tough question, I would say, because see, this is what normally is the misconception about the uses of the glass. The first thing what I said is that are we using the glass or abusing the glass? It's because the quantum of the glass what we are using, have we thought about it before using it, or have we used it just because West is using it? If we have given that thought, then this is not a challenge, because today the kind of technology which is available, if you are using, so when you are seeing a building, it is complete glass. But when you consider that as the WWR, which is the window to wall ratio, it cannot be more than 70% for any building, because the rest part of the building will be the beam and other structures. So at 70% WWR, will you be able to design efficiently? Yes, you can do that if what you have considered is the passive designing strategy. When we talk about passive designing strategy, whether you have used the glass in the right orientation. We always see the solar radiation falling, but at which orientation? Southwest orientation takes the most of the heat. But if the southwest orientation, where we are able to take care of that glass by just a small overhang, where the solar inclination is very high and it is not giving very inclined solar radiation, so you will be able to take care of that. But in case of west, whatever overhang you will put, it will not help, because the sun is going down and it will hit. So this kind of orientation analysis. Then the sun path. So sun path, there is a software available which can talk about from where the sun path is, and basis that you design that where you have to use the glazing and where you have to avoid using glazing. And if we are able to do that, there is no challenge in using the glaze. So if you'll see that WTC, the front facade is mostly the glass. Back they have used the glass along with the concrete. So it is, I am assuming that they have used the same process where we have done the passive designing with the help of orientation, sun path analysis, and because in the World Trade Center, of course, there will not be any surrounding. But if you are making, say, some small heighted building, 4 or 5 story building, and there is some skyscraper beside that, you will never get that solar radiation. So those are the things, if we are able to take care, there is nothing wrong in using the glass, but if it has been thought through properly.
Thank you, Sailesh. Everything is about that. Technologies, don't run away from them, but understand technologies and use them well. Well said. Look, we have about half an hour. Now I'm going to come to you guys, because I want you to be asking questions, not just me asking questions and telling you stories. That's not the idea out here. So I'm going to turn around and catch some of you and ask you to direct 1 or 2 of your ideas and thoughts on the subject of what individuals do in terms of climate action in the built sphere. You know, it's our mother, we are the children, and it's our earth. So I'm going to first turn to my dear friend here, Kamal, who curated this entire panel. So Kamal, let's have your word. Yes, young lady. After Kamal. Yeah, first is Kamal.
I think इनको देते हैं.
Thank you, Kamal sir. So I can address the panelists. I think one of the... Hi, I'm Venaka. I come from Young Leaders for Active Citizenship, where I lead the climate vertical. And my question, so we work a lot with young people, and I think one of the complexities of working in climate is I know nothing about glass, I know nothing about defense. So when good things are said about glass and defense, I just have to nod along. But I do work a lot with young people, as I said. And yesterday, I was not there for the first day of the Griha conference, because I was there at Bhalswa, which is the largest dump in Delhi, where all our kachra essentially goes. And I was speaking to students there and how it's impacted their lives. And the students were talking about how none of their families are without an illness that has directly resulted from Bhalswa, because they burn the kachra there. There's a large dump. You can smell it in the air. Just like if you leave something in your dustbin for 4 days, there's liquid that starts pooling at the bottom of your dustbin. There's large streams of this liquid that enters their community. And this leads to a lot of climate anxiety. They may not have the words to use this. This is children of, the sweepers, the rickshawalas. They may not have the words like climate anxiety, but they know exactly what's happening. So in an esteemed panel like this, I would love to hear how, they want to take individual action. They want to take ownership of these situations. But how can these young children, their families, young people, really contribute to climate action, especially when they're living under such hard day-to-day circumstances?
Thank you very much. What an excellent question. And thank you for drawing attention to this expression, climate anxiety. Where all of us come from, the big words are climate justice. But I'm so glad that you've mentioned this, because for individuals, it's a question of anxiety. Anshul, please remember the question. Yes. I'm going to turn to you and to Vaibhav, because we need to think through this. And we are here talking in terms of individuals, not in terms of the government of India's policy space. That's a different thing altogether. We must address this. You know, many people would tell you that all these climate conversations are all about mitigation and not about adaptation. What is this mitigation and adaptation? Production. It's not on the consumption side, but we have to do things on the consumption. I'd like to hear from you. Any ideas? That's important. Let's take a walk. Who else has something to ask? Somebody's on a telephone. Come on, does everybody know everything here? Or there's no willingness to do any individual action? You have a hand here. Where, sir? Oh, very nice. Do I like this? And I'm very delighted to see a complete gender empowerment out here.
Yeah, so voices of women matter, and more so in decision making. And I think in our homes, women have a binding role and can drive climate action. However, are they being heard in their own homes? And are the decisions being made towards avoided consumerism, which leads to garbage? Or the decisions that we are making about use of glass in the house when you're building the house may not be driven by the female gender. So what can we do about it? Any thoughts and ideas? Because only some women can, overrule some decisions that are being made in the house.
I like that very much, ma'am. Of course, we all talk about empowerment and what empowerment means and so on. And I see you're carrying the Dubai COP29 cup. You know, let me say this to you. Whenever I've seen women empowered, they've done exactly the same thing as we guys. Margaret Thatcher was very famous for saying, I wear the pants in the room. So, nothing to say. Come on, guys. Perk up, man. Somebody should say something. Yes, thank God there's a good guy sitting right at the end. It's always the backbenchers who do it, you know. Even in the British Parliament, they're the only guys who bring the Prime Minister down. The front guys are very interested in their cars and bungalows.
So, hi, everybody. I believe that the workplace has a lot of impact apart from just 9 to 5, and we are all speaking about this, all the actions, everything from the 9 to 5 rule. But does the honored panelist have a plan for empowering the employees and all the relative to the particular organization for beyond 9 to 5 activities in terms of any role possibility? Is there any plan for that?
Thank you very much. Thank you for pointing out that it's not only 9 to 5, but we have 24 hours in the day. Anything else? Anyone else? No one else has any question? Oh, how nice. Thank you very much, ma'am, for continuing to tilt the gender balance.
So I'm going to take two sides to this. Yeah, I'm Madhu. I'm from Chennai. I'm an architect. And this is a perspective from, both a normal person as well as, a professional. So first, as a normal person, most of the things that we do are addressing consequences that we create for ourselves. So from that point of view, a lot of it is something that we cannot actually deal with. Like say, for example, in Chennai, a lot of development happens over the ponds and everything. So a normal person beyond a point is not capable of addressing issues. So for them, there's some amount of handicapped aspect that comes into it. So from that aspect, even though there's an intention to, do something, like rainwater harvesting and things like that, it doesn't make any sense beyond a point. And from the professional point of view, there is there are innovations happening across, there are cities built over the seas. There are cities in a normal, say northeastern sea, it's very normal to have a building that's raised over the stilt, and it's a vernacular intention. But in policies or even in regulations, we don't see, can there be innovation in, mitigating certain issues even with simple thought processes like that? So it's I don't know what to, expect beyond that.
Ma'am, don't feel helpless. Individual empowerment. is a particularly important thing, and in democracies, believe me, individuals matter. It takes time, and I understand where you come from. Building on low-lying areas, waterlogging, we've seen Bangalore, we've seen Chennai, we're all familiar with it. It does happen, but individual empowerment comes together. Get yourself together. Have you not seen that happening in the politics of the country? It will happen even in the area of what we may call adaptation, climate, greening, etc. People are becoming more aware of it. You know, when I joined the Foreign Service in 1982 and I was posted in Germany in early 84, that was the first time that a Green party got elected to a parliament in Europe. It was the Greens in Germany. All of us laughed, these guys are fighting against nuclear weapons. But today, Green has become a household name. And people have forgotten about the Greens. The Conservative Party is more green than the Green Party is. That's the nature of it. Keep at it. Very nice. Anyone else? Otherwise, we are going to go back to the panel. Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sanju Panta. I was just listening Mr. Anshul. He's from NGO services. I have one suggestion. I will just share one of our experience in my house. My son is a doctor. So number of my sisters come, relatives come. So he usually in the evening switch off in every room because we don't have the habit of this switching off these lights or closing the taps. So once he said it, one of our relations are coming, you just guiding them, don't close the taps, जितना पानी चाहिए उतना use करो. तो मैंने कहा उसको कि यार क्यों है ऐसा क्यों कर रहे हैं? कह रहे पापा आप हमारे बच्चों के लिए पानी नहीं छोड़ पाओगे. This was a shocking कि आप हमारे अपने नहीं हमारे बच्चों के लिए पानी नहीं छोड़ पाओगे. So this type of अगर awareness हम बच्चों में छोड़ देंगे ना कि वो घरों में नल के वाटर यूज़ नहीं करना ज़्यादा, बिजली बंद कर दो, लाइट नहीं यूज़ करनी ज़्यादा, it will be a great for this environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm coming to you, sir. When the Honorable Prime Minister speaks about life, it's about lifestyles. This is not the example, but this is the example, isn't it? कि आप खुद क्या कर रहे हैं? So you remember, बहुत साल पहले जब पावर की शॉर्टेज होती थी हम लोगों को सभी कहता थे बिजली बंद कर दो, लाइट ऑफ कर दो. ठीक है, अब आप सोचिएगा यही हो रहा है. सो पर्टिकुलरली इंपॉर्टेंट, खुद तो करना ही पड़ेगा. सर,
I am S.S. Chandel. I am from Himachal Pradesh, Shimla. We worked on solar passive design of buildings since long. My question is use of glass in high-rise buildings also. You mentioned that upper portions of the building may not have effect due to solar radiation, etc. Are you working on that? Because use of lot of glass will naturally create the heat effect inside, even if it is small, this thing. So in buildings we have, glass is mostly used in every side of, north side also, so a lot of losses are there. And use of glass will also relate to use of lot of air conditioning inside also. So how do you do that? And whether you have some case studies about the high-rise buildings and other buildings in solar passive? Thank you.
Chandel Saab, thank you very much for amplifying my question about the World Trade Center. So, I'm very delighted, madam. Very happy to see a colleague of mine also wanting to ask a question.
Thank you, sir. So I think all the speakers have touched upon the work that they've done in their own specific areas, but I think as a consumer, as a citizen of the country, I still find that access to information, access to the work that you all are doing at a common platform, and to have that knowledge and understanding as a common person. Very few events and very few work has been done at that ground level. So how do you mobilize that, and how do you ensure that information reaches the grassroots level?
Absolutely excellent. If word won't get around, how is anyone going to know what Shailesh just mentioned, that they have simulation exercises, they have modeling availability, etc. And then Chandel Saab's question will remain unanswered. They perhaps also have a responsibility, not just Seth Saab and me and people like us, and not just the government of India. We need to do something. Ladies and gentlemen, back to you all. I'm going to ask you all questions. You've heard them. In whichever way you want to address any of them. But Sukhjit, first I'm going to ask you. One, do you take the decisions? That will answer her question.
I think that's a very specific question. I would say that women are a part of every organization, so therefore women have a role to play, even in the defense production side about decision making on energy efficiency. So I think that question I can answer. But I would say that talk about macroeconomic and macro planning, but also we're also doing a lot of decentralized strategy execution. So the key to our success of energy efficiency in the defense production has been really laying down a comprehensive energy policy with well-defined targets, a clear roadmap, and implementation strategy with very stringent timelines. So making people aware has changed the mindset, and this also helped the PSUs take easier decisions, quicker decisions, have speedier implementation of projects. And that has also helped them take impactful action across various diverse sectors. And coming to data information, I would say that having a portal, online portal, has helped PSUs track how much consumption they are doing and also take impactful action. So that's all from my side.
No, thank you, Sukhjit. This dashboard idea, is esoteric, but particularly important. And it really helps. I think you have a huge challenge because of the scale of what you do. But your advantage is that you can almost set the goalposts, depends upon the objectives that the government and the polity do. The private sector has a double-faceted element which they need to work on. Excellent. I would want someone, Anshul, you, Weber, someone or the other, to address our friend who's actually an architect, but on the question of individual empowerment and what do they do in the area of climate. So, Anshul will come to you in a minute because you possibly have to answer these questions. But Weber, let me ask you, what should be policy frameworks for these questions, what she asked out there, and what about some of the other things that were raised here about people?
Sure. So I'll try to pick some connections from the discussions we have had, so far. Speaking to, the first question, raised by the audience, like on the waste problem. I can relate very well to this problem because I stay very close to Ghazipur Dam, which is another, menace, in the Delhi NCR region. And I think first thing we should ask ourselves, what is the causality? Because as a youth, as a new generation, probably we are not, that efficient consumer the way our moms and grandmoms used to be. We are, with more disposable income in hand, we are eventually, producing more waste. And that is ending up in all these dumps. So I don't know, like how many of are, so efficient with management of, say, kitchen waste, organic waste, earlier which used to become a resource as a compost and, ended up in the, flowering pots. Likewise, earlier, I have seen, we used to, stack papers, we used to stack glass bottles separately and, give it to the, kabadiwalas, informal economy. But that thing, eventually, that lifestyle has changed. And that is adding to these mounds. Now, bringing a policy angle to this, I think, as a country, India, we are one of the biggest consumer market. We are also aiming to become one of the biggest producer. But at the same time, we are also sitting on a huge amount of waste. And we are not seeing this waste as an urban wealth. Many people have coined the term as urban mining. We are not tapping this waste as an urban mine. We should pick example from Japan. Japan is I would say, advanced economy. They have lesser resources, especially on the electronic side, where we require, say, critical minerals like rare earths to manufacture many goods. And China imposed an embargo on export of rare earths, sitting over 97% control of the exports. They hosted an Olympics. All the gold medals, silver medals were out of those electronic waste. And from that waste, they also tapped rare earths out of it. So we are not thinking at that level of policy framework by collecting waste. Right now we are sitting on a challenge, how do we basically dispose this waste? Rather, we should be thinking that how do we efficiently utilize this waste, and that translate back and forth as an individual, how I can minimize my waste, as a policy, how can I efficiently channel this waste? And maybe entities like Anshul drives, they can connect youngsters with urban local bodies in driving the local level policies, that how we can minimize as well as make it efficient. Again, just a thought.
Thank you very much, Vaibhav. I must tell you a little story. You know, good 15 odd years back, when this climate business really came to the fore post the Russian ratification of the Kyoto Treaty, we in Terry did a large study in terms of these 4 R's: reuse, recycle, etc. And it's a massive study lying somewhere in our stores here. And we were wanting to make the point that we are not an inefficient economy, we're not a bad economy. But the studies showed that the reuse here in India was among the best, as you said. It's all courtesy the kabadi wala. Not a bad idea. NDTV ran a program, and one of our colleagues was there on the program with this nice fat report and all the data there, and they had Preeti Zinta on the program. And Preeti Zinta was obviously given first choice. She gets up there and the first thing she says is, we are terrible. I go to Europe, I see them segregating all the waste. My colleague with this 400-page booklet had very little to say after that. That's the nature of all this. We're changing. We are doing. So, you know, we were doing things in a certain manner. And we were a frugal economy. We were circular because of frugality. But, you know, we're also becoming rich. We like the idea of being a $5 trillion economy, don't we? And then comes the wastage. The US is perhaps the most wasteful economy in the world. They are the richest they can afford to be. You know. These things are somewhat linked to all of this particular thing. But very important, young lady, the word that you mentioned, climate anxiety. Let me leave this thought with my colleagues here. Kamal, please put this across to the other side. We need to try and write something about this, because it is particularly important as we look at life, lifestyles for environment. We also look at what is the bottom-up thought to it. It's not just about this big thing, climate justice and so on. What is the people at the bottom? They may not know the words, as she said it very well, but it is climate anxiety. And it should become an important element of what you highlight. Thank you very much for what you said. Prabhakanji, I come to you, Anshul. You've got to answer most of the questions. अब आप आंसर करिएगा मुझे with your CSR experience. What do we do about addressing climate anxiety? And what do we do about all the other things that people raised out here?
Before coming to your point, I actually just very interested that you raised the point about the women empowerment. So there a lot of work is happening around empowering women, and unfortunately, empowered women is following the same path that you have given the example. But what about the sensitization of the other gender? Is it easy to live with the empowered women by the same mindset that we have? This is the question that actually, and it's very, very complicated. Maybe the repercussion or with the reaction, whatever is happening in the society because of that. So this is very important to sensitize the other part also. So I think the development sector and the civil society people also look forward to work with the men and boys on the gender aspect also. And we are trying our best for that part also. So this is not that forum, so I will not discuss about that project. So coming to the climate anxiety and that point that you have raised, that point from the Chennai, I think. So I feel that actually individuals are matter, but issue is collective. So we have to actually create a small forums or come out within basically in a collective forum to address the issue. Individuals matter, but individual voice, if is coming in a group, that can create the impact. And there are a lot of examples are available in terms of the protest, in terms of the basically changing the mindset of the policymaker towards certain decisions. But I feel that actually the individual voices should come together, and then only they can make the significant impact. And come together doesn't mean that 50% or 60% people should come. Only 3 to 5% people are enough. If we are able to mobilize 3 to 5% people, they can change the entire system of whatever is the context in that case. So it's about actual mobilization of very small people in a common goal. That is very important.
Young lady, I hope you were hearing. You need 3 of you to stand up. And you are, of course, an architect. So you're not just you, but you're standing up for those who know, who are capacitated, and who are capable. You stand up and you say your bit. Believe me, commercial interests also see long-term interests for them. While it was fantastic to build, in the backwaters of the Buckingham Canal and in the lakes in Bangalore, the guys who paid those several crores in getting their houses cleaned, the builders are also learning a lesson. But please stand up, because it's important that you do, and follow what his son had to say. Do it yourself and feel empowered. That's, I think, particularly important. Shailesh, what are you going to tell Chandel Saab and me about air conditioning and glass?
Yeah, the question was, so sir, I think you are from Himachal, so the question is that how this heat which is coming inside the building, how we will be able to mitigate it. So first word of caution is every building is different. Every building is unique. So every building has to be treated differently. So suppose if the building is in Himachal Pradesh or in Delhi or in Jodhpur or Mumbai or whether it is in Bangalore. Why I have named these cities? Because these cities represent 5 different climatic zones of the country, starting from the cold to hot and dry to composite to warm and humid and to the moderate. If your building is in any one of these places, the design challenges will be different. If it is, say, Himachal, which is the colder climate, you would like to retain the heat. There, the glass which you are using has to be different. If you are using a glass which is in the hot and dry, it is a very extreme climate. There, the requirement of the glass will be different. I'm not going into the technicalities, too much of the technicalities, but as sir said, simulation and everything is available to decide that what kind of product to be used. And now there is a myth that if we are using glass, it will allow the heat to come inside, which is wrong. There are glasses available which can reflect 80% of the heat back. So what kind of glass we are using where? And at the same time, in Himachal, if you are using that same glass which is reflecting 80% of the heat, you will find me and you will kill me, because you want the heat to come inside, because your heating requirement has to be reduced. So to answer the first question is that we have to do the proper building analysis, and there is no straightforward thumb rule answer for any kind of building that what kind of glass to be used. But it purely depends on the wish list. That is what normally we miss out. That whenever we require any kind of product, we take our requirement, we go to the product. In between that, we forget the wish list, what I require from that product.
Yeah. No, of course you can. The idea is for all of you.
I think, yeah, I'm Dr. Sunita. I'm from Mahindra Life Spaces. It's responsible use of glass and of course requirement and all of that. But thumb rule is, look at what local buildings look like, see what materials are there, उनकी खिड़कियाँ कैसी है वो देख लीजिए, उस हिसाब से घर बनाइए. Local material, local architecture and हमारे heritage पे जो गर्व होना चाहिए हमारा, वो important है. Automatically खिड़की छोटी हो जाएगी, shaded हो जाएगी. That is the thumb rule you follow, okay? Because many people will not be able to do simulations. Builders को आप बोल सकते हैं simulation करो, but local home owners जब घर बनाते हैं उनको नहीं बोल सकते. So आप locality देखिए, sunpath देखिए, वो area को जाके 10 बार देखिए कि कहाँ से आपका धूप आ रहा है, नहीं आ रहा है, and design what local people have done, and be very proud of your home, which doesn't look like as if it is in America or in Europe. So that's the rule that we need to follow. Build local, with local materials, local homes.
Thank you very much. The importance of local. Chandel Saab.
So as I told you, we have been working on this solar passive design in Himachal Pradesh since 1994. And we have studied the traditional architecture, involved a lot of Delhi-based solar experts in solar passive and local architects also. So that is okay. I was asking because he was saying the high-rise building, the trade center building, the upper part may not be affected by the solar radiation. So solar radiation, etc. I know different glasses are there, reflective, etc. But how do you ensure that the heat which will be gained during daytime also and night time also? In Himachal also, houses get heated during summers also. So you have to make a study, as you told you, that I know architects can do with simple techniques as well as a local architecture also. But how you can ensure lot of glass use in the buildings as along with your commercial interest also, because architects, engineer, they will say more glass to be reflective, etc. That type of glass may not be required at all if we follow the solar passive strategies also. They are very simple strategies. You are not to spend a lot of money, but there are commercial interests involved, as our experience says. So how to make a balance of that?
Absolutely, what Sunita ma'am said rightly, very rightly said. You have to use the glass, do not overuse it, because it is for the commercial interest of the companies as well. If today I'll tell everyone to use the glass across the building, and they will not find the result which they expected, they will not use the glass at all in the future. So that's why you have to use it intelligently. And I completely agree with you that in a place which is, say, west facade and it is completely in the sun, in the hot and dry, why you will use glass? If I'll tell you to use glass there completely 100% glazed, I'll be not doing the justice with this product itself.
Thank you, Sailesh. Sir, long-term commercial interests also lie in their being smart, just as yours. Sir, last question, because then we need to end the session. Bolenji, please.
Insofar as use of glass in building is concerned, how you are taking safety against fire and earthquake, because 59% of the area is earthquake zone.
Sir, so safety. Some quick question.
Yes. So
you know,
very
obviously
quick,
build means
yeah.
architects ask about glass. We'll take 2 minutes.
Yeah. So two safeties what you spoke about. I'll add one more, which is the wind. So seismic thing is the design component of the overall frame, because glass as a product is a non-load bearing product. So it doesn't impact in case of the seismic activity. It has to do with the frame. But what you asked about the fire safety, it is one of the most important part which we all should understand, that there are different specialized glasses which is available, which is called fire resistant glasses, which is as per the standard, it is categorized to 3 parts, E, EW and EI. And it is also find its mention in the National Building Code, Fire and Life Safety Chapter 6, I think, where people are talking about 120 minutes of the fire rating which you should get on the area which is the exit zone, which is the exit passes which you are using. So yes, the glasses are available for the fire safety. Second is the wind safety. So when sir was talking about the high-rise building, in the high-rise building wind goes up to 3 kPa. So you have to design the glass in such a way, there are a lot of software available to do that, and we can design the building for fire as well as for the air pressure.
Sailesh, thank you very much. Sir, glass has evolved a lot. Let's put it at that. Anshul, we began with young people. This is about you all. It's not about you, it's about your children. If I quote you right, sir. You have the last word on this panel.
Thank you. I just want to quickly answer the question that Venika asked about Bhalaswa. So specifically on Bhalaswa, so we've had partners who work in Bhalaswa. We've trained more than 60 young people to tell their stories from Bhalaswa. I think the only way to get attention to issues like that is to make it a voting issue. Because till the time it's not a political issue, it's not going to get attention. You're talking about civic sense, which honestly for people, it doesn't exist right now. Waste segregation is not my problem because मेरे घर के बाहर कचरा नहीं है, वो कहीं दूर है, right? उसके घर पे कचरा पड़ा हुआ है, मुझे फर्क नहीं पड़ता. The second very important thing when we talk about things like waste and people who live around waste is the general mentality that if somebody is poor, the resources that they deserve should also be poor. Government hospitals, biggest example, right? People who are the poorest of the poor go there. The resources available there are absolutely terrible, right? So it's very important that we think of things like waste as a civic political issue and not just a behavioral issue, because to assume that young people today are unaware is wrong. Actually, young people in the last 10 years have led the biggest climate movements across the world, including in India. So young people actually are very aware. They're very aware. But we are inheriting a system that is encouraging us to be so desensitized towards things like waste that we stop caring beyond a point. That's one. And I want to also answer quickly what you asked, that information is very complicated, and it's completely correct. Some of the best resources available on climate change are by think tanks whose language a common person cannot understand. Even when you go from English to Hindi, in Hindi, climate change is Jalvayu Parivartan, right? It's only about Jal and Vayu. But that's not climate change. It's so much more complicated than that. If you go to regional languages, it's even more complicated. So we don't have the language and the ability for a common person to fully express what they're feeling when it comes to climate change. And I completely agree that we need to completely decentralize information as much as possible. And I will just leave at that thought.
That was absolutely fantastic. It is about the futures. Remember, we're talking about one planet. That's what we are talking about. We've come to the end of this session. Thank you very much. Sukhjit, I was going to end by saying, please incorporate Griha in your scene, but you beat me to it by saying you've already done it. So thank you very much. Thank you to all of you, to you, Sailesh, Sukhjit, to you, Anshul, Vaibhav, and Prabhakar. And more than that, thank you to all of you. Wake up. The day's just begun. There'll be lots more in the Griha Summit. Courtesy Mr. Sanjay Seth and his team. I assure you it will be productive, useful, not just a networking opportunity, but one from where you will take away things which will be productive in terms of your life and the work that you do. Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you, Ambassador Manjeev Singh Puri, for moderating the session so beautifully. This probably was one of the most interesting group of panelists due to the coming together of the range of speakers that we had. It was delightful to hear from all of our speakers. I would now request Mr. Sanjay Seth to kindly join us on the dais to present the token of appreciation to all our distinguished speakers. We'll begin with Mr. Anshul Tiwari, founder and CEO, Youth Ki Awaaz. Dr. Sukhjit Kaur, DDG and Advisor, Department of Defense Production, Ministry of Defense. Mr. Vaibhav Gupta, Associate Director, KPMG, India. Mr. Prabhakar Jain, Head CSR, DS Group. Mr. Sailesh Ranjan, Business Head, Asahi India Glass Limited. And last but not the least, to our moderator, Ambassador Manjeev Singh Puri. I request all the panelists to join our audience, and I request Mr. Sanjay Seth to please stay back on stage for our felicitation ceremony of Griha Summit. So we first have Griha NASA Trophy 2024, which is an architectural design competition. We have 4 winners. And the first award, Special Mention 3, goes to Indian Institute of Technology, Bhumi Putroham. Synergy Thrislington. Gujarat Guardian Limited.